Hi there friends, it's Dan. Welcome back. Welcome to another plastic miniature review, this time for the HaT, LCID, Andalusian Light, and Heavy Cavalry sets that are produced for their 28mm medieval line. And straight away I want you to know that this is a sponsored video. HaT sent these to me to review for you. So I'm very grateful to them for their ongoing support here and for reaching out to supplement some of the earlier reviews we've done for their medieval line with these two sets. You'll probably be seeing this go up at basically the same time as a video I'm doing for their 25mm plastic dragoons for their Napoleonic range. I didn't want to do that as like a quadruple feature because I thought that would be way too much information, and when I do like double features like this, I want the two sets to basically complement one another in terms of what they are comprised of. So it makes more sense to do two separate videos, one for the dragoons and one here, but I'm doing them kind of at the same time because I really want to do some scale comparisons of their 25mm cavalry to their 28mm cavalry, and then vice versa. So I wanted that information to be contained within both videos, and so the only way I could think to do that is to essentially film them at the same time. So we looked at their, some of their anyway, LCID infantry sets a few weeks back, and I thought they were great. They don't have some of the detail that you might expect from like a War Games Atlantic kit or a Victrix set, and if you're looking at medieval stuff or early medieval stuff, but they're not trying to do that. They're trying to put out stuff that's very easy to paint, very easy to put together, and that is very affordable. That's what I keep coming back to. Again, I don't really like to discuss value much, but I will talk about price. Each of these boxes, I looked online, I can typically find HaT boxes for like something between $12 and $15 US. I saw some of these boxes going for like $8, and these both contain 12 miniatures inside of them. So I mean, you can do the math for yourself on how far that's going to take you in terms of army building. And what we also saw from their infantry was that it actually scaled up pretty decently. It's on the smaller side, but it like something like 26.5mm to eye level, I think, is what I decided on for scale. But it scaled up very nicely with some like Middle Earth strategy battle game stuff and some of these smaller medieval plastics that we see from the likes of War Games Atlantic from like a bits Kitbashing standpoint. The box right here is nice. It is a little more stylized than what we see with some of their Napoleonic stuff, but I think that it certainly conveys what's inside quite nicely, which is obviously the goal of these boxes. And on the back, what we have in this case, which we did not see on the dragoons, if you watch that video again concurrently with this one, is depictions on the back of the poses that are inside. Again, these are slightly stylized drawings instead of just having like 3-up renders. I quite like this. I don't know why. It kind of reminds me of like in any of the Total War games when you have those little like unit roster tabs down at the bottom that they might have like a drawn illustration of the thing instead of like a hyper-realistic version of it. And I quite like that. And again, the poses accurately convey what's going to come inside of the box if you were to pick it up for yourself. So inside of either box, if you were to pick it up for yourself, what you're going to get are 3 copies of each of these sprues. As with the dragoons, I have one off in the wings right now, drying, because I had some, I think, really great feedback requesting that one sprue be spray painted with like a matte spray paint, because some of the plastics are a little bit on the shiny side. So I thought, let me spray them up flat sprue colored, and we'll see how those look here in just a moment. So again, you're going to get 3 copies of either sprue for whatever box you pick up. The light on the left, the heavy Andalusian Cav on the right. 12 miniatures total per box. So if you're new here, welcome. What we're going to do is look at one each of these sprues. I'll give you breakdowns on the contents of that sprue. We'll look at them in detail. I mentioned I'm going to bring in one of the primed sprues at the end of the overview here, just so you can see that and juxtapose that for yourself. I'm going to assemble these miniatures, do a little bit of kit bashing if I can, but I do also want to then do scale comparisons with different manufacturers and critically with the 25mm HaT dragoons that I am reviewing at the same time as these, or mostly the same time as these, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So let's isolate one sprue of each here. We'll start with the light cavalry. That seems fitting enough, and I'll give you a shot of the front and back of the sprue here. So once again, we just saw this on the dragoons. I think the detail on the horses are quite nice. They're definitely on the small side. I can already tell that just even as they sit on the sprue. That like the infantry, it's going to be like some kind of like mid-range scale, a little bit smaller than their newer 28mm stuff. I didn't mention that this 28,000 series was their first foray into 28mm stuff, and their newer stuff, which is part of their I think 2000 series, is more properly 28mm scaled. Like that scales up nicely with like Perry and Warlord Napoleonics. But their earlier medieval stuff's a little bit smaller, but we found, I mentioned, it scales incredibly well with Middle Earth strategy battle games figures, which for these guys would make, I think, for some excellent Haradrim. So I think that's actually how I'm going to paint all these up as a little standalone Lord of the Rings project. But again, from a detailing standpoint, these are quite nice. HaT has the design philosophy. I actually can't remember if I mentioned it in this video or not. That's kind of the downside of doing reviews at the same time. I did mention it, I think, in the Dragoon one, that they have the design philosophy of keeping miniatures comparatively simple to put together and paint. So it's going to have a little bit less detail than what you might see from another manufacturer. But again, the price point is also going to be substantially reduced. Again, 12 miniatures for like $10, even $15 at the high end. You know, $1 per figure is pretty great. And a nice mix of, there's really nothing to put together here, right? Like the shield's already attached, heads are attached. There's 2 bowmen and 2 like light lance guys here. And they look really good. I think they're going to be fun to paint up. Nice animated poses on the riders and on the horses. And again, a nice mix of poses and detailing on the horses and the saddles. Also, really minimal flash on these, right? You can see from the sides, there's going to be almost nothing to clean up, which is nice. Let's look at one of these heavy sprues here. We'll do a shot of the front and back here. So again, very nice in terms of production quality. There's going to be minimal cleanup here. I will say I think these horses are the same horses as what come on the light cavalry. Let me see if I can orient them the same way. Yes, we've got the heavy cavalry on the left, light cavalry on the right. And yeah, at least as I see it, I think they are the same horses, which isn't a big deal. It's not like there would be barding or anything on the heavy cavalry. It's just something to be aware of, that you've got essentially 4 horse poses across both cavalry sets. But again, the individual sculpting on the horses is quite nice, and they're plenty varied between them. So let's focus in on the riders then. So again, we've got 4 unique looking riders here. Looks like 3 of them are going to be armed with some kind of lance. You've got the longer lances here, which is a clever design, I realize, because it means you can cut it down to whatever length you want. You can either have a very long lance as it comes, or you can like cut it down here if you wanted to have a shorter lance. And then one guy with a axe there. Probably would have preferred just all of them to have lance options, just so you don't have like, again, 3 copies of one dude with a lance or with an axe. But I'll see what kind of converting I can do there. But I think they look cool. I like the different shield designs. All 4 of them had different shields, which is nice. Again, a little bit of shallowness in terms of like the face detail, but as I mentioned, that's sort of HaT's philosophy from a design standpoint, is they don't want you to be bogged down at the painting stage. They want you to get miniatures on the table and get them played with. And then here, just for the sake of comparison, I've got the same sprues, but primed in gray. So let me just show off some of the details here in case you can see it any better. I actually do think it helps in terms of picking out face detail. So that was a good suggestion from you guys. Let me do the same thing here with the heavy sprue. Look at the horses. riders. Yeah, again, a lot more definition in the faces from the priming step. So thanks again for that suggestion, guys. I think these look great. Alright, let's check these out. So I've just got a mix of figures here for you. So remember, the horses are all going to be the same. The riders I'll call out as they come up. This is one that was from the heavy cavalry. I said I was going to do it and then I didn't. This one is from the light cavalry with a hand swap. This is a javelin from a Victrix set. Light cavalry. You can see, I think the detailing, again, especially on the horse, is quite good. And they're going to be a little bit small. We'll prove that here in a moment. Heavy cav. But will scale well, I think, with some of your metal figures, which tend to be on the smaller side, especially from companies like Gripping Beast. Light cav. Heavy cav. Another light cav. These bowmen, I think, also look particularly good. And this last one here is another simple conversion. That's just a hand swap, I think also from Victrix, incidentally. So you can actually get some pretty cool poses out of these guys. Let's throw them on the Lazy Susan and see how they scale up. Okay, scale comparison time. So, as normal, pay attention to the fact that some of these miniatures have splash bases, and I think just one of them does not, and then one of them is also on a different proper base, which is this Oathmark Elf Cavalry model there. But otherwise, I'll call them out as they spin here. So you've got a HaT Heavy Cav there. It's a Victrix Medieval Knight, Wargames Atlantic Medieval Knight. HaT Heavy Cav, Fireforge Medieval Knight, Victrix Roman Light Cavalry, HaT Light Cav, that's a HaT Heavy Dragoon, HaT Heavy Cav, Oathmark, Firelock Games, back to the Heavy Cav. So you can see they're on the small side, again, just like with their infantry that we saw, they're some kind of unique scale, 26.5, if you'll allow that. But they, I think, scale it pretty nicely, especially with like other light cavalry options, like we see here, the Victrix Light Cav there, with the option here. I think that would work quite nicely. I'm actually surprised to see, I guess this is more owing to my suspicion that this is kind of a unique scale, that the proper like 25mm model there in the Heavy Dragoon is basically the same horse size as the Light Cav here. So it gives you lots of options to play with here in terms of what you could blend them in with. What's the final verdict? I really like these guys. I think that they have an excellent amount of detail. They're on the small side. Again, we saw with their infantry, it's kind of like a 26.5mm scale, something like that, which means they're going to be a little bit smaller than most of your 28mm stuff, a little bit too big for maybe some of your 25mm stuff, but scale very nicely, as we saw with like the Lord of the Rings stuff. For example, that's what I'll be using these as. I think I've mentioned maybe twice now. That's going to be my plan for all these horsemen, and I'm going to mix them up with the infantry and paint them up for Middle-earth strategy battle games. But beyond that, I think they're going to scale very nicely with maybe your like older metal sculpts you might have in your collection. But the truth is too, like I would honestly have no problem blending these in with some of my proper 28mm stuff, especially if I'm using these as like light cavalry off on the wings. You can see from a proportion standpoint, like the bits work on them, even from some of the larger proportioned companies, right? So it's not going to be like egregious, and the price is right. I can't stress that enough with HaT, that I've seen options for these like online for like $9 US. Seems like the average seems to be something between like 12 and 15 US for 12 models. But even if you're just picking them up for horses or just for riders, if you already have horses, this is a really cool set to be able to leverage for a lot of different projects, role-playing games. I was even thinking about like these for like board game kind of scenarios. just has access to pieces, painting projects to test out. Always talk about like back rankers for Napoleonics, but like filling out maybe some of those like light cavalry units you might have in your medieval armies. Or I always say this about HaT, just because the price point is so correct for this, that if you're a father like me or a grandfather trying to get some younger ones in your life into wargaming without breaking the bank, or risking wasting a bunch of money if they don't like really like it, this is another great option too, because not only are they going to be reasonably priced, but they're also going to be comparatively easy to put together and to paint for newer gamers. So definitely something to check out. I've got a link down in the description to the HaT site. That's one more thing I wanted to mention, that I've said in prior videos that HaT, you can't buy from them directly, which is true, but there's an asterisk on that, which is that if you can't find a source for a kit that you're looking for, HaT has told me that you can actually email them and they will coordinate getting some miniatures that you can purchase from them directly in that instance. It seems like you just have to do a little bit of due diligence to try to find the miniatures locally if you can, but if you can't, you would be able to purchase from them directly in that instance. Massive thanks once again to HaT for sending these my way. I will at some point be doing a painting project for all of these Andalusians, and see what I can come up with for my Middle-earth Strategy Battle Games project. But until then, I'm very grateful for you dropping by for this one in the meantime, and until next time, happy gaming.